Kentucky Senator Rand Paul was one of just 2 Republicans to vote against her, and he joins us now. Senator, yesterday, we know Gina Haspel got confirmed. You didn't just vote against her, you single-handedly delayed the whole process. How come?
I was still asking her questions. I'm still concerned about not only her role in extreme rendition and torture. I think one of the things that didn't really get discussed enough was she was involved with waterboarding, which many of us do say is torture and should not represent who we are as a people. But one thing that didn't get talked enough about was we also rendered people. We had extraordinary rendition where we sent people to Assad, Syria. You know, most people now say, well, Assad is this barbarian that would gas his own people. He was also a barbarian that would torture his own people. Often people wouldn't leave alive. And I think really should we be rewarding and promoting people who actually kidnapped people, sent them, blindfolded them, flew them around the world and dropped them off in Assad, Syria to be tortured, often to death. There was a Canadian engineer that was tortured there for some time. And even the Syrians finally said, oh, whoops. It was the wrong guy. If you look at Senator Feinstein's report on torture, 26 of the 125 people tortured were the wrong person. And so it gets to this thing. One of the things about our country is probably the greatest thing about our country, one of the greatest things, is the presumption of innocence, and that you get a jury trial and you get a lawyer, and all that went out the window because we were frightened that these were, or we were angry that these were terrible people. But you know, murderers are terrible people, but we have trials for accused murderers to make sure we get the right people. And so I think it was a big mistake to appoint her, and I'm still very much opposed to her being head of the CIA.
How big of a mistake? People say that, you know, Ben Carson, Betsy DeVos are completely unqualified for their positions. How do you put Gina Haspel in this spectrum? Unqualified, there's just simply better candidates?
I think it's more goes to the symbolism of who should represent America in these positions. I have 3 family members who serve in the military, and I'm concerned that the message we have sent to the world is that really if our people are captured, that maybe torture is not so bad, since we have appointed someone to run the CIA that actually, by most accounts, was an enthusiastic supporter of the program. And really, we never had anybody ask the real question, and that is extraordinary rendition, sending people to barbarous regimes to be tortured above and beyond not just waterboarding, probing, electrodes, all the kind of worst stuff you can imagine in torture was done in Egypt, done in Syria, some say done in Jordan as well. And so really, yes, this is a terrible mistake to be promoting her to be the head of this agency, because she's a representative to the world of our country.
You also sent a letter asking her whether she knew about surveillance of candidate Trump. Did she answer, and what do you know about that?
You know, I have my suspicions, and there have been a lot of reports in the press that there was British intelligence listening to Trump administration officials and then feeding that information to the CIA. I asked her very directly.
So did she answer you?
Yeah, this is an interesting point. I asked her very directly, did the CIA do this? She said emphatically that the CIA never cooperated, and these are her words, cooperated with British intelligence. I sent back the question and said, to be clear, are you saying that the British intelligence never shared information with the CIA? We couldn't get that answer in writing, but she told Senator Burr, who then relayed it to me in person, would I accept his word and his honorable word that no, this never happened. This is the word I was relayed to, that Gina Haspel says to Richard Burr,
that seems
no,
very
it never
strange.
Happened. What?
That seems very strange that you ask her a direct question and she doesn't respond. She plays a game of telephone to get it back to you.
Well,
and the reason I keep pushing on it is because the president has been tweeting about allegations that whether it's the FBI or the Department of Justice put a spy in his campaign.
Yeah, and
I mean, is that what you're talking about, too? I worry that these are conspiracy theories.
Well, no, I think that's why I wanted to get to the bottom of this. And typically, people in the intelligence community will only talk to an ordinary senator if they have to. You've seen John Brennan being very dismissive of me and any others who have any questions, saying he's not on the Intel Committee, he doesn't get a right to know. This is the problem with oversight of our intelligence committees, is that only about 8 people know what the hell our intelligence agencies are doing, what wars we're fighting, for what reason and with what weapons. Only about 8 people know, and they're typically rubber stamps for more war, more intervention, and often more extraordinary rendition and torture. So, yeah, I want to get to the bottom of it. But the bottom line is here, she was emphatic and pretty clear that they were not cooperating with British intelligence. The answer, and I'm still pushing this morning to get it in writing, is that the British, they did not receive intelligence from the British intelligence to the CIA. If it does, that does dispel.
How come nobody else thinks this is crazy? How come it's only you?
Well, you know, I just want to get to the truth of the matter, and I want them to be on the spot. I'm for more transparency with these agencies, and I think I want them to respond to us. And I think often, you know, other than Ron Wyden on the Intelligence Committee and maybe Martin Heinrich, there are very few people asking the tough questions on the Intelligence Committee of what's actually going on around the world. And often they're given classified answers, then they're not allowed to tell anybody what they've been told. So really, there needs to be more sunlight on all of this.
Amen to your request for transparency. I hope you take this mission to the EPA and Scott Pruitt, to the president and his tax returns. I want to ask you about North Korea. Do you think North Korea is serious about walking away from the summit, or is this just gamesmanship and this is how it works?
You know, I think there'll be jockeying back and forth, and I think there's a certain amount of gamesmanship to it. I think they wanted to express that they're unhappy about the military exercises. They have been for a decade or more. They always express their unhappiness every time they have these military exercises. I think from their perspective, they may have hoped that in doing the goodwill gestures, if you can call it goodwill, I guess, of releasing political prisoners and then also stopping nuclear testing, I think they had hoped for a little bit more, and they didn't get it. But frankly, I think they'll be jockeying back and forth. Diplomacy is about saving face and about showing strength, and so this will go back and forth, but I'm still very hopeful that this is a little bit of an ancillary or perhaps a sideshow, and that Singapore still, the meeting still happens.
How do you feel about the people around President Trump who are focused on the North Korea situation? I mean, John Bolton specifically was called out by North Korea, and this is a guy that called for a preemptive strike just a few months ago.
John Bolton's a very dangerous man. His ideas are dangerous and naive, and I would hope the president will discount them. And I have been encouraged, though,
but
and
the president chose him. The president just gave him the job.
I realize
so
that.
Why would you discount somebody who you just asked to the dance?
I realize that. You know, my hope is that there are a variety of voices. I try to be one of those voices, but I'm not there on a daily basis. But every chance I get when I talk to the president, I think, you know, I express to him that a diplomatic solution is better than a military one. And I think actually, you know, as much as I've been a critic of some of the people surrounding him, the fact that Pompeo had already gone to North Korea did sway me a little bit in the end in voting for Pompeo, is that there is some outreach towards diplomacy. There has been this bellicose rhetoric, but now there's also this ability to give diplomacy a chance. So I am still very, very hopeful that there will be a diplomatic solution. If he does, I think it will have defied all expectations, left and right. You know, the president has gotten a great deal of criticism for the bombastic rhetoric, and yet, if they come to the table and there's actually a meaningful diplomatic solution to Korea, he'll have done something no one's been able to do in 70 years.
Without a doubt, and there were a lot of people who voted under the idea, it's just so crazy, it could work. You were talking about speaking to the president, and I remember last fall, Axios called you the Trump whisperer, and they said that you spoke to the president a few times a week and could really get your mission out. Fast forward, president picked John Bolton, who you say is extremely dangerous. He picked Gina Haspel. We know what you think about that, and he signed a budget that I know you don't like. Have you lost that special connection?
You know, the interesting thing, I think sometimes things are overstated. So to say that I'm the Trump whisperer, that somehow I'm influencing him, probably overstates it. I do talk to him periodically, and I do have a connection with the president. And it's interesting that when I talk to him, I feel as if he is for less intervention, that he truly does want to leave Syria. And people say, well, he's staying and he bombed Syria. I still think, though, that he can want both at the same time. And I do think that he doesn't want a big land war to continue in Afghanistan. I think he truly did think the Iraq war was a mistake. And my point of view is that we've been at war too long in too many places. And I will do everything I can. And if I have any influence with the president, I will continue to try to influence him that it's time to come home. I'm for declaring victory in Afghanistan and coming home. We spend $50 billion a year there that we don't have, and some of that could go to pay down the debt, and some of that could go for other things that we need here at home.
But have you grown weary with that exact sentiment? I believe that every time you speak to the president, he is in agreement with you. He's not pushing to the extreme. But when he's done talking to you and he turns, and it could be a Stephen Miller, it could be a John Bolton, it could be somebody on Twitter who likes him, the president changes his tune. We've all learned he's a salesman and a chameleon, and he basically says whatever the people in that room like.
Well, one of the things I would say, though, that he is consistent. I think he said it yesterday again. The Iraq War was a mistake, and there's a big lesson there. It's not just a historical footnote. The idea of regime change was a mistake. And so when I hear about them saying, oh, they want regime change in Iran, I try to emphasize that, the president's been very clear that a regime change in Iraq didn't work. And then I try to draw the parallels that regime change in Iran, I think, would create another vacuum and a disaster, the same way regime change in Syria would. So while John Bolton wants regime change in Syria, and he was picked by the president, I actually don't think that's the president's position, to be for regime change in Syria. And so I think we all do the best that we can. We all want our ideas or what we believe in to succeed, and so we do our best to influence those who are in positions of power, vote the way we can, have a debate, and we all acknowledge that we don't always get, our way in the end.
We open our hearts and minds, and we try to be our best selves. Senator, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks.